Okay, everybody, hopefully you can hear me. I am live now and looking to continue sculpting the 100 Heads Meds Heads Challenge. 100 Meds Heads. I have a setup here for traditional sculpting, and I have this ruler and this knife here just so that way I can sort of stay within the area that I'm trying to record in. So you can see here what I've been doing lately is I've been setting up with kind of a cylinder of clay to serve as the necks for these pieces, and then from there I sort of build the skull structure around that, and I just kind of go from there. I find it easy to make a super long neck, you know, only even though the neck itself is really only going to be probably from about here up. Being able to have something to hold on to the sculpture with is really, really useful. So yeah, so I'm kind of looking for that. I just want to take a second here and just sort of be able to share the stream on social media platforms. So if you'll give me a second, I will be back in about 30 seconds, hopefully. All right, let's see if I can remember how to use OBS to disable this. Okay. You know, so I can actually stay on stream to be able to share that. It's not such a big deal. It ain't that serious. So I'm just gonna share it here in my story. All right. Okay, so let's get into it. I have a night off where I'm starting a week of vacation at work, so I'm starting it right with some sculpting. I'm not, so I'm using Chavant clay here, which usually I would heat up in a, I would usually heat Chavant up in a toaster oven, but when sculpting at this scale, and I'm going to make these heads about this big or this big, depending on what camera you're looking at, about about 1.5 inches. So at that scale, I don't find it useful to heat the clay up in a toaster oven because it makes it a little bit too soft to work with at this scale, especially the fact that the way that I'm trying to execute this is by keeping everything pretty loose. So right here I'm working on getting in a variation of a nice kind of right there. That's going to be my jaw and chin line. And that's sort of the workflow that I've been settling into lately. Just getting that in there. Super helpful. So I haven't streamed in quite a while, so it has not been natural for me as of late. But I'm happy to be able to get on here. This challenge is so incredibly challenging. Just the sheer scope and size of it. You just have to brute force your way through so many different heads. You know, I'm getting to the mid 70s now. So if this was a homework assignment, I'm somewhere in the neighborhood of about a C plus or a C, depending on how your school graded. But I'm getting there, man, and I'm not rushing it. I know that a lot of people, when they do this challenge, get to a point where they start setting timers that are unnecessarily short, in my opinion, and they end up just doing like 10-minute timers or something like that. And you can, of course, do, 100 heads, 10 minutes each. So, you end up doing not that much time. I can't math on the fly, so that ends up being a lot quicker. I'm trying to do each head in about half an hour to 45 minutes, so that way I could get some decent resolution on there. And I've been using Med's Pinterest board for reference for a lot of these, but I'm thinking on stream for right now. I'm going to wing a couple of these just to warm up, just from imagination, just using the sculptural anatomy that I have locked in already. And you'll see here that after I have the jawline, the next thing that I'm doing is working up sort of an exaggerated back of the skull. So I'm going to keep working that up till I get to a height at about here that I want to see. And then I'm going to curve it around. And so I'm going to like reverse engineer almost everything in the skull until I get to that point. So just happy to get a nice studio night in here. And yeah, so right there you see these striations where every time I apply a little bit of clay. Now I'm probably being a little bit more inefficient than I should be, but I'm trying to control just how much height I give the skull. And so right there. Now that's probably all the height that I think I'm going to need. So I'm just going to quickly use my pen, actually, my ballpoint stylus, to kind of just smooth that clay in and lock it all together. This is similar to what you see in ceramics, where someone will score the clay to lock different applications together. And it's the same, because the Chavant is oil-based and it wants to stick to itself. So it's really fun to kind of turn around and have that. Very easy. It's got good tensile strength, it's going to stay together pretty easy. Later on in the course of a head, I'm not going to want to do this because it'll mess up the fine detail work, but we're only going to take these to a certain point. So now the next thing is I'm going to start building out the bulbous part here of the I'm going to start marking out the bulbous part here of the cranium. So the way that I'm going to do that is just going to have a simple simple U-curve, and I'm going to put that right on top. And I'm going to try to keep that at the same height that I already have and lock it in again. Now, with Chavant heated up, I would be way past this already. I would actually have the entirety of the skull mapped out, but I'm actually trying to slow myself down so that way I don't rush and I don't take certain steps for granted. I really want to be able to just turn around and work this in the right spaces. So again, gonna hit another U-curve here. And now you can see that the shape of the skull is starting to take form. Getting a warning here that my resolution is not optimal. Huh. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. But anyway, I'm going to keep working on this skull here. If my audio is all messed up or anything like that, or if you find that the video is just not working, just let me know and I can just keep something in on it there. Figure something out. Okay, so the reason why I put the chin and jawline in there first is because it's good to control with how much the forehead juts out. So I think probably one more application of clay to get that forehead, and then we'll start working on the face. So that's probably it. That might even be overdoing it, but I'm going to stay there for now. I'm going to work this into a flatter forehead. And now that's good. So there are things that are missing still. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add the occipital bun here in the back of the skull. So I'm just going to use a little bit of round clay here. I'm going to stick that right there. And I know that's not much, but that's going to kind of give me a lot of indication, especially as I pull back on this side of the skull there too. That should kind of give me a lot of what I need. And now what's left is going to be the form inside the head and the face. So I'm gonna grab a little bit more clay. And some of my clay is harder because it's old Chavant medium that I've had for 6 years. And then some of it is softer because over time I've mixed it with Chavant Lebeau Touch or Lebeau Touche, I don't know how to say it exactly, which I got back in 2019 and over time has worked its way into the rest of my clay because there's no reason not to mix it. I feel like the Lebeau Chavant is very soft to a point where for the most part you don't have to heat it. And if you do heat it, it's really like working with soft soap in your hands, which is really cool. And the Chavant has better tensile strength, but you know, if you don't heat it up, you're really at a loss for something there. So I want the brow to sit a little bit lower. It should be about halfway, and it's not halfway yet. So I'm just going to put that there and pull it in to the sides of the skull and push that there. So far, this skull could be male or female. I haven't done anything to indicate it one way or the other. So that's where we're at. Now I'm going to get myself ready in 1 second to sort of move forward on this. Okay, so let's see, what else are we going to do now? I think what makes sense after this is going to be to start with, and this has been the workflow that I've developed over the course of a number of years, and also over the course of this exercise, moving as fast as I can. Of course, doing this on stream is slowing me down a little bit, but just trying to really refine that cranium shape. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of clay, and it needs to be big because I have no cheekbones here. This is totally concave in there. I'm going to slice it in half. And then I'm going to work each cheekbone in where I think that it should be, wrapping up into where it meets the sort of brow ridge up there. Now, because these two pieces are equal, they're good. They're starting to give me a little bit of the profile that I want to see from each angle. And now because of that, I can work in sort of a nose shape here. Now that's going to be too long, so I'm going to cut it again. For anyone that might watch this back later and wonder, and if anybody comes in and asks, I'll address it. But one thing that ends up happening here is, you know, to work on this sort of challenge, I've been limiting my tools. So for everything that you're seeing here, I've only been using this ballpoint stylus, and this ballpoint stylus has a rather small ballpoint on one end. That's what I've been burnishing for most details, and then over here it has sort of a rubber tip with a point that's a little fatter. So I've been using this one stylus. I have other sizes, but I've only been using this one here, which is on Amazon, and then I've been using this spatula tool, which is usually for much larger sculptures, but I've been using it here also for some fine detailing work and just as a small knife. So there's this, and this is a Durabali, I think it is, tool. One small loop tool. So this one has kind of sort of a square tip. I don't know if you can see that there. And then the other end is a more rounded loop. So I've been using one loop tool, one burnishing tool or ballpoint stylus, and one spatula tool. The only other thing I have sitting around is this knife and this ruler, and that's just so that way I can keep my hands somewhere where you can see them. And then other than that, I'm using this ceramics tool, which I have it here on the desk, but I really haven't been using it. So with all those here, that's what I've been using, other than, for the most part, a lot of this comes down to your fingers and your thumbs, man. So let's keep working. I'm actually going to take that stylus tool, and I'm going to work in to merge the cheekbone into the ocular cavity right there. Just going to blend all that clay in real quick. Not using a lot of time here, because a lot of this stuff is going to actually be lost once I start working on some more muscles and some more of those features like the cheekbones and that kind of thing. This is sort of just giving me some landmarks for right now. And I'm just moving the nasal cavity over a little bit now. Okay, so now at this point, I want to start doing some things to make this skull more realistic and more female. One of the things that the female skull has on the back is a large occipital bun. The occipital bun for women tends to be more pronounced than men. So I'm going to use a nice, for this size sculpture, nice big piece of clay, nice hunk of clay for this size. I'm going to stick it right there. And I'm going to work that in and blend it in quick. And I'm going to blend the neck up a little bit. Now, even though that's pretty good, I may have to come back again and hit that again. I may actually have to shorten the skull up here. So let's do that quick. Let's loop a little bit off the top of the cranium. And I'm not going to use new clay. What I just cut off, I'm going to grab. I'm going to stick that on the occipital bun where I think it belongs by looking at the profile right now. So now once that's in there, I'm going to keep going now. This looks like he's talking, right? Or she's talking. Now, right now it looks very skull-like, and that's okay because I'm going to keep it moving. So, female sculpture. The forehead should be a little bit more pronounced, and there should be no discernible brow line. Female humans have much less of a brow ridge than their male counterparts. So I'm just going to work that in here and pull it up. And now what we're starting to get is the beginning of these female features. Now, I've been working from the skull on each of these because they're practice. I could have done these a lot quicker if I decided to start with an egg shape or sort of do like I guess the equivalent in drawing of like the Loomis method, where you start with the shape of an egg and then you work forward to include the features you want and skipping all that. But I've been taking more of a construction approach, and that's all right. So I'm going to open up these ocular cavities just a little bit and blend that clay in. So now we're starting to get what we really want here. Again, I'm going to bring out and extrude the nasal cavity. And I'm not going to blend. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it out even more because our noses stick out quite a bit. It's one way to not have flat features is to really stick the nose out. Hi Dolly, how you doing? Thanks for coming by. I'm sculpting one of the most difficult internet challenges out there, which is the Meds Heads 100 Heads Challenge. The Meds 100 Heads Challenge by Ahmed Aldoori, who's a friend of mine. And Med was in New York recently, and I told him that I was going to work on his challenge that he put out a couple of years ago. And usually it's for 2D artists, but I'm a sculptor, so any practice I can get ends up being useful. Okay, so now we've got the beginnings of a nose there. We're starting to take shape slowly but surely. So I'm going to move this along a little bit, and I'm going to once again bring the cheekbones out. And then maybe we'll bring in an upper lip. So far, this is what I'm working on right now is I think number 75 out of 100. So I did all the male heads first because I tend to be able to have an easier time with them because I generally tend to sculpt more male figures. So I started with what was easy to sort of tighten that stuff up first. And now I'm working on the female heads, and I'm, goodness, what am I? 25 heads into that. And it's been a really good experience. I realized that there were a lot of things that I was doing that was really counterintuitive in a bad way. Like I was doing a lot of inefficient things, and I'm still doing some inefficient things, but at least right now they're things that I'm choosing to do, like constructing the skull on each one of these. I know it takes more time, but it's good practice. But something that I was doing was, at first I was sculpting not just the neck to hold on to, but I was also doing shoulder blades to get a sense of scale. And that's because I'm used to sculpting a head on a whole figure. I don't do many busts. So because I don't do many busts and I have very little experience with that, I needed more anatomical landmarks to start sculpting a head. In fact, if I was to just try to do a head from scratch with no neck, I know I'd be a little bit lost. So I kind of tend to avoid that. Although, you know, what am I trying to get out of this challenge? Getting better at sculpting heads, then I probably need to slow down. If what I'm really after is trying to be more efficient, then I should be trying to speed up and get that good effect with fewer strokes, fewer applications of clay, fewer steps. But this is a lot of steps. So far, what have I been, I don't know how long I've been streaming for, but let's see, already it's been 26 minutes and I'm this far on ahead, which is not bad actually for a bust. But at the same time, man, if you're really working for speed, I know that I could probably get to this point in 5 minutes or less. Maybe on the next head I'll try that. I'll try for a speed sculpt on the next head. Okay, so now you see I'm working the upper lip in. Now, if this is starting to read female to you or it's not, one of the reasons why it should be starting to read female is there's no brow ridge here on the forehead. Also, I'm going to keep, you'll see it more, but I'm going to keep the jawline thinner and short. Dolly, I hope you're doing something fun tonight, or working on some art or doing some homework or something like that, but I'm happy to be able to keep you company. All right, so let's see. Now, because we have this this profile here, the next thing that I really want to do is I want to start working on the pronouncement of the chin. This character has no chin yet, so let's do that. Let's work on a chin. And the extra clay from the chin is what is going to make up my upper lip area. So now that we've dragged that out, no, that's okay. I'm gonna put some of this extra clay, hide it under the upper lip, and I'm actually going to start doing this thing. So our lips are really funny the way that they're structured. So your lip doesn't just come out from under your nose up. It comes out and up, but then also it comes up from the other end. And to sculpt that properly, you actually have to understand that, so that way you can thumb it. Like I can't thumb it because this is so small, but I'm using my little tool here to sort of try to show that if you pinch up, it'll start to show just like a lip shape. And so right there, now we have the shadows requisite of a lip. And now that we have our chin in place and everything else, now all we have to do is get that lower lip in and maybe pinch the jaw a little bit more narrow. A little bit more narrow, but we want fuller, higher cheeks, because that's another thing that female type skulls tend to have. Yeah, you can see it looks like a woman. Yeah, it's getting there. It's getting there. You know, from the skull, you really have to be an anatomist or an artist to really know. And then as you start adding meat on it, you've known whether or not you've built the right skull or not. That's always the trick. And so, okay. So now we have all those parts in place. We have everything we really need. Something that I'm going to do here, because even though there's so little jaw, there's still probably almost too much jaw. So I'm actually going to take the spatula, and where your I'm going to mark about halfway where the jawline is. And then I'm going to bring it down from there to connect towards that chin line, and I'm going to carve away there. Here I'm going to do the same thing, and even though I have to carve away a little bit here on this side as well, I also have to build up in here with some extra clay because it's a little too concave on that side. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little clay and just work it right in there and then blend it into the cheekbone to give a cheek. Okay, and then on this side I'm going to use that loop tool, and I'm going to drag right here and remove some extra clay. And I'm going to remove some extra clay under the jawline. Right there on that side. I'll do the same thing on this side. I'll take another look at it. It's okay. What's it missing? Probably a little too wide in here, so I'm going to give a little pinch. And then narrow it a little with a little pinch. And now we're starting to get there. I feel like I could probably make that brow just a little bit more narrow. And now we're getting to a point where we have most of the planes where I would want them. Just want to smooth out some of that cheek space in there. And I'm just checking the profile again. All right, sweet. So now I'm going to throw on some ears really quick. Just basic, using very basic shapes for the ears. Just pinning them in by using the stylus to drag some clay. Now I'm going to pin them back just a little, just a little. Okay, now you've noticed we don't have eyes yet. So one of the really cool things with this challenge has been learning to really get very efficient with eyeballs. So for years and earlier on in this challenge, and for years before that, probably since 2015 or earlier, every time I would sculpt eyes, I would insert balls of clay into the ocular space, which is what I'm about to do now. And then what I would do is I would leave that ball shape, and then I would manually drag eyelids over that shape and try to literally sculpt. When you're done with all 100, are you going to smash all the heads together? One thing that I was thinking about doing is taking all 100 and joining them together to make a big head creature, like a big head monster. That might be really fun, because there's no other way to do it other than if you're going to sculpt 100 heads. So it would be a long time on the internet before I see anyone else sort of be able to do that. Yeah, so you'll see I'm adding both eyeballs, and I'm trying to get roughly the same amount of clay into each eye hole, ocular cavity. And then what I would do is I would take thin strips of clay and lay it over and try to work it in Oh no, that would be nice. Yeah, that would be that could be crazy. Um, yeah, there's definitely something to trying that for sure. Uh, I mean, once I'm done with them, I'm not going to keep them. It's a lot of heads, and it's like a lot of my clay. So the good thing with Chavant is it's reusable. So eventually it'll be scrapped. But maybe I should make a crazy head monster out of it. That'd be dope. So one thing that I learned, instead of trying to take layers of clay and like put eyelids over circles, you know, like this, which is what I've done in the past, which doesn't work as well. In the end, it ends up looking very unrealistic and a little cheap. You'll see it eventually when I show all 100 of them. I got some very good advice from my buddy Steven, who was like, why don't you just rough in the outline, the shape of the smoothness of the roundness of the eyeball in the cavity, and I'll do that here. So without ruining the roundness of the ball, I'm just blending the edges into the cavity, and that gives a much more realistic and natural look at this scale. Then if I want to, I could even push the clay around a little bit to imply an eyelid. You see that? I don't know if you could see that on the camera. But right there, I've implied an eyelid, and I'm going to do the same on this side here. So I'll drag the edges so that way I can blend them into the underside of the brow ridge and near the nose and underneath. Once I feel like I've got that blended pretty well, I'm just going to start dragging some clay to make it feel like eyelids, and then I've created the illusion there. So right there, that's the sort of trick with this. And this took me, you can't understand how many years I have struggled trying to get eyelids just right, and lips was another trick. Getting to that point years ago where it's sort of like, oh yeah, if you just sort of drag them in a certain way, they'll look real. They'll look realistic, at least. Or at least they will fool you because you've sculpted them correctly. And so there you go, right in there. Boom. Female head right there. Now I could leave her bald, but what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to do a hairstyle. So let's see, what hairstyle should I go for? I don't think I've done a chick with a mohawk yet. I think it's mohawk time. And in fact, with the male heads, I think I only did 1 or 2 mohawks. So getting kind of sick of long, flowy girl hair. So let's do like a punk rock or a Storm from X-Men. An 80s Storm mohawk. So this is easy. I'm just taking a length of clay. I'm going all throughout here, and then I'm going to pinch throughout. And there you go. That's it. It still reads as female, even though it's I don't sculpt it. That probably will work. Have you tried water to smooth it out better? So this is an oil-based clay, and so water won't do anything to it. It's like as if it's got Vaseline in the clay. And Vaseline actually, Vaseline would smooth this clay out. Oil, like if I mixed olive oil into the clay or orange glow, that'll smooth it out. Or rubbing alcohol will dry it out and smooth it out. So when you bring to finish anything using oil-based clay, what you end up having to do is add extra oil to it or use alcohol on it, but water will just run right off. It smells like crayons, and it's kind of like crayons. Yeah, water is not going to do anything. It's totally water resistant, actually. Yeah, kind of crazy stuff, man. It's a really weird medium. When I started out, for years I used to use Super Sculpey, which is a modeling clay, the kind that you put in the oven and you bake it. And then once you bake it, it becomes solid, and then you can sell it as a one-of-a-kind sculpture. The problem with that stuff is it's a little hard to control. So I think right here we could call her done. I think she's pretty much good. One thing I could do to sort of give her hair texture sort of better attention is now that I've blended it into the head, I can smooth all this stuff out. And just using your fingernail, I mean at this scale especially, you can kind of use your fingernail and your finger on the other side to pinch it and give you the kind of right texture that hair, kind of like an illusion of hair, kind of starts to ribbon out a little bit. And just like that, I could even twist this here and it gives you sort of curls, you know. I tend to not spend too much time on hair unless I'm actually finishing a piece, but I think for stream especially it's nice to sort of do some of those finishing touches. Straightening out her nose just a little bit. And that's it, man. That's one. Now one thing I'm also going to do, because it's a female sculpt, is I'm going to pull here on the neck a little bit and thin that neck out, because I'm not going to be using it to hold her for much longer. So now that I've thinned out, oh man, my finger wasn't showing that. So once I now have thinned out her neck adequately, just a little bit here and there. Now I'm going to decide where the neck kind of would end, which is right there. I'm just going to slice off the whole head and I'll put it aside with the other finished ones. Using the spatula to cut into the clay. And there we go. She's all done. And that's number 75, I think. It's either 75 or 76. I have to count again. There's so many of them here that I'm like using my multiplication times tables. So that's it, man. That's it's one in the books. I do want to smooth out her cranium just a little, just with my thumb. You know, you really could just keep noodling on one piece forever and ever. But at a certain point, you kind of have to leave it be. Okay, she's done. I think she's got a lot of personality. And that's it. Nice. Okay. So now we're going to start another one. Okay. All right, so I'm going to use the same bit of clay for the next neck. Just going to roll it out in my hands a little. Okay. So now we have the neck structure. We have what I'm going to use to hold on. And that's it, man. We're going to do another head. This time I'm going to speed sculpt it. So I'm taking this big hunk of clay I have here and I'm going to roll it to get it a little pointy. I'm going to flatten one end to start forming a jawline. Okay, so in terms of like basic drawing books, like How to Draw the Marvel Way, which I know a lot of people have read, and I picked up when I was a kid. I loved that book. How to Draw Comics, the Marvel Way. One of the things they talk about is that the head, you know, if you're constructing the head and you have limited anatomical knowledge, you can just sort of start with an egg shape, which is what I've done here, right? head is an upside down egg. But even though that's true, it's only true to a point, right? Like, it's, yes, it is an egg shape, but the point of the chin makes it an irregular egg. The point of the egg is not directly at the bottom of the egg. It's slightly over, because your jaw sits at such an angle that your neck is under it, and then there's the point. So you kind of have this teardrop shape on the bottom. Even that's not total, and this is still not totally perfect, but all right, so let's try to speed sculpt this next one. Okay, so I have my basic little shape there, which is what is going to start off as my head. I'm going to pinch it a little bit. I'm going to smooth the clay out on the top of what's going to be the cranium, just a tad. And I'm going to stick it right on my neck. And so that will help with a lot of wasted time. Now I'm going to drag some of the neck clay up into the skull to make sure they're connected. And now that they're connected, they're connected and we have all of this, it's like that's 90% of the work right there. You know, that's that. If you're not moving slowly, if you're moving fast and you trust how much you know the shape or the silhouette of a male or female skull, like right there, this should already be reading as male or female to you, and that's because of the occipital bun in the back, the shape of the forehead in the front, and the depth and width of the jaw. So right there, that's almost everything. Now the next thing, because I'm doing sort of a Loomis method, I think that's called Loomis method, I'm going to drop a line right down the center of the face, just so I get my symmetry line in, and I'm going to drop a line basically halfway down the skull. So that's where my eyes are going to go in. Now I'm not just going to stick in some holes for the eyes. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to carve away a little bit where I'm going to want to put my cheekbones. I'm going to carve away this whole section. And the only thing I really want to rebuild is the front of the face, because the head, my whole silhouette for the head's there. So the only thing now to sculpt is the face. So I'm going to remove some clay. Okay. And now that I've done that, pick up this bits of clay. A lot of my teachers in the past have had like studio rules about not having bits of clay go everywhere. They hate that and the messiness. They hate it in students, and it's after a while it gets kind of hard to just do your own work when you're surrounded by so much bits of clay. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to work in my eye shape. So I want one here. Okay, that's going to be the hole. And one here. That's going to be the hole. Now, again, this is from imagination. This is not based on a real person, this one. I'm going to push that in. And I'm going to push this in. Wiggle it around just a tad. And that's good. Now I have to add some stuff. First thing I'm going to do is I have to add a little bit extra forehead, but not brow ridge. It's important. So the forehead itself should come out a little bit more, but there should not be a separate brow ridge. So right from where the eyes are. So it takes a little bit of extra clay. I'm going to take a tube of clay. I'm going to lay it right over where the eyes are, and then I'm going to just pull it up the whole way. So right there. From there, this all gets pulled up, but I don't want this brow ridge. That'll be that'll read as really male. So pulling it up, pulling it up, pulling it up. Now what have we got here? We've got a brow ridge, but we've got a shelf. And with that shelf, I'm going to add a little bit more clay. Have you tried different methods? Yeah, I've used a bunch over the years. So this is one that I have used the most when I'm doing a full figure, because it's fast, and you know, the head ends up being just a part of the whole sculpture. The whole sculpture is the body, the gesture, the anatomy of the hands, the feet, the character, the costume, the storytelling, everything. So with that, I'll use this method the most because it allows me to move fast, and also I'm usually going to make some mistakes anatomically that I know that I can correct if I just give myself some patience. Like this is going to be less precise than what I did the first time. What I did the first time was slower and more precise. This is a little bit more of a shotgun approach. So right here, now we have our ocular holes, we have our skull kind of forming up, we have our forehead almost as high as we need it. We need the forehead even higher, so I'm going to add even more clay. So in that first method, you noticed one thing that I made as not a mistake, but just something that I had to correct as I'm moving it. And sculpture it's a corrective process always. Is in that first sculpture, I had made the cranium too large, and I just cut away at it a little bit. With this method, you're adding to the cranium a little bit more as you go. So now just a little bit more at the top of the skull. And when you add to the top of the skull and the cranium, what you're doing is you're shrinking the proportions of the face as well, which is good because our faces are much smaller in actuality than they appear to us generally. So yeah. Okay, so now that we have all that going on, there's only a couple things left to do, which is cheekbones, nose, mouth, and we're done. We're out. I mean, of course, we'll throw on some ears and some hair, but then that's going to be it. I also want these ocular cavities just a little bit deeper. Okay. All right. So this amount of clay here will be good for both. Will be good for both cheekbones. So I'm going to roughly cut it in half so that way I know that I'm adding an equal amount to each side, because unlike a ZBrush, there's no symmetry button in real life. You have to just be about as confident as you can be, and you got to be as about precise as you can be, and then you have to really look. Sometimes one thing that helps is if it's a sculpture that you really want to bring to finish, or that means a lot to you and you've been working on it for 10 or 14 hours, take it and put it in front of a real life mirror, and then you'll see exactly how asymmetrical it really is. Sometimes we really convince ourselves, oh, that's symmetrical. And then when you put it in front of your bathroom mirror or your bedroom mirror and you look at it, you go, oh boy, that is not symmetrical. That is not nearly symmetrical. So okay. All right, now I've basically got, I think I've got a good face proportion going here. Part of me wants to bring that forehead out even more, so I'm going to do that. There's no reason not to. I mean, even though, you know, there's a wide variety of like human variation, but you know, I want each of these to look, especially when I'm doing them from imagination, I want them to look as feminine as possible within the sort of culturally within a certain cultural norm for me as a person living in North America in the 21st century. You know, these aesthetic choices would be way different for a sculptor in the 1800s or the 1700s, or especially in antiquity. Yeah, well, that's what I do with my paintings, and just well, there's no going back. Yeah, man, in a painting, you have to be more precise. The other thing you could do is, I suppose, in a painting, and I don't know if you paint digitally. Well, you wouldn't be saying that if you paint digitally, so I'm going to assume you paint traditionally, because digitally there is going back, but traditionally there is none. So one thing you could do, which I would recommend, my recommendation would be to sketch your faces in and then paint them as much as you can, as much as time and deadlines and whatever else will allow you. That tends to be a pretty good way to approach. This is like the night where I'm making like really big noses. Remove a little clay. Yeah, man, that's what I would say. Of course, sketching in your heads and your faces first is good, and then once you're up to your values and all that stuff, then that's where life gets a little trickier on paintings. But I don't know too much about that stuff. You could probably teach me a few things, honestly. Okay. Alright, now we have a nose forming. But it doesn't look realistic yet. It's not wide enough. So I'm taking a small little strip of clay, and what I'm going to do with it is I'm going to wrap it around the base of the nose to make the base of the nose wider, and that will give me the rounded look that noses have in a lot of situations, in most situations, because noses tend to be more bulbous at the base because of cartilage and the structure of the nose. See, I've found that it makes more sense not to push into the clay to form a nostril, but rather to build the nostril by building the form of the nose. And so that gives you kind of a kinder shape. Okay. Next thing's next. This cranium is way too short. I gotta add a bunch of clay on the top of the head. Bless me for trying this method, but I have probably over sculpted, which is why I need to add so much at the top of the head here, and that's all right. It's all right. It just gives me a slightly different scale, but that's one of the things I was trying to avoid earlier. What happened was I've over sculpted the features on the face, which resulted in a shorter cranium. And so now when you add that, it looks much more human now. When you don't have enough brain space there, if the sculpture starts to resemble cavemanish or apish, that's because those hominids don't have the space for, our brain takes up a huge amount of head space. Yeah, I mainly do digital, but sometimes I do traditional. I want to do more traditional art, though. Yeah, you know what, man? Like, with digital, it gives you the ability to share your art so much quicker and to not have to wait for things like God, like waiting for paint to dry, having to gesso stuff, having to gesso your canvases and things like that. I find I have some limited experience painting on canvases, and I find it really relaxing. But I can totally see why working digital is just, it's so much more attractive for a lot when you're doing a lot of work, you know. Okay. This head is giving me a little bit more trouble than I would have bargained for, but we're about to get through it. We're getting there. We had a lower lip and see what else I can see. Upper lip, rather. So the upper lip goes on. Just drag it into the rest of the flesh there. Blend it in a little bit. Get some of that softness going. And now I'm going to push it up to begin the shape of the lip. Now that I have that, just drag down on that structure there. Okay, lips in. Lower lip and chin. The chin's about okay, but it needs to stick out just a little bit more. You did digital sometimes. No, I have no experience with Photoshop or anything like that. I have some experience with ZBrush for digital modeling, and a lot with web-based browser sculpture solutions like SculptGL is what I've done most of my 3D modeling on. And I find it really relaxing. I find it much easier to 3D model than to work in clay. But the good thing with working traditional with sculpting is that I find that, you know, when I'm done with a piece, I own it, I have it, it's right in front of me, I can touch it, I can mold it, I can 3D scan it, I can give it to a friend. There's just so many more options available with it. However, with digital, you know, you can get a nice version of it out to so many people so quickly. And there's something to be said about that, man. There really is. We're getting to that point with this piece here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to save her upper lip a little bit. Yeah, it's kind of a mess in there. I might have to just redo the bottom lip again. But at least the chin's in. Yeah, digital definitely has its place and its uses. I mean, especially like if you want a job, if you want to work in a studio or something like that, you need digital. The whole world runs on digital now. Everything is assets in that way. There's honestly not much else in the world, job-wise, artistically, unless you're selling your own stuff, and that's not an option for a lot of people. Just market forces being what they are, you know. Okay, I'm going to lose a little bit of this extra skull space in the back. I'm going to put a little bit under the chin, just in terms of like neck meat. Now I'm going to solidify that sort of jawline there. Okay, I need to work this lip in again. Let's see, what can I do to work this lip in again? Come on, let's work this lip in. That's a little too big. Need a little less clay. I'm going to use this piece instead. Just a tube. Just put the tube right under the upper lip. And then just blend it. Boom. Done. Done! I know I said this was the speed. You know, Dolly, you're in here. You could let me know. I know I said this was the speed one, but this is taking me just as long as the first one, hasn't it? Yeah. Yeah, I think it has. All right, eyeballs in. There's one. And there's two. I'm actually going to make this one a little smaller. Okay. All right, we've got some eye shapes in there. She's got kind of a sharp jaw, and that's cool. Some people are like that. They have sharp jaw lines. I don't do much of that, but I dig it. I dig it. Okay, if there's anything else I need to do with her, it's going to be working in some hair, so let's do that quick. Let's roll up some clay. Now, I'm not going to sculpt ears because I'm only going to hide them under some hair here in this one. Or you know what, I could use a practice. What I'll do is I'll give her a ponytail. I really like the sound of that. When was the last time I did a ponytail? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 heads ago. Yeah, ponytail it is. I could do a ponytail, or I could do a bun. Okay, that's one ear in. Right there, there's the other ear. Okay, so now I'm just going to drag the clay. I'm not modeling the ears, you know, all the anatomical structures. I'm just not doing it. If we were at a larger scale, I would. And I have a lot of cool simplification tools for doing ears, but I don't really want to work that right now. I really just want to focus on sort of getting the planes of the face about as accurate as I can. Sometimes this clay will stick to the tool, and you can just wipe it off on your hand, or I'm using a silicone mat here, so clay will come off really easy to that. And then the clay comes off of the silicone really easily if you wipe it with a tissue or something. So, okay. Ponytail. So let's see, how are we going to do ponytail? First thing is I'm going to take some bits of clay and I'm going to put them where the hairline is. So obviously, young woman's hairline, right? We're working a piece of clay in there. piece of clay is going to go around here. And women do have sideburns, which people forget, which is really strange when you see female sculptures or drawings and there's no sideburns, but like, you know, chicks have hair there, and unless they deliberately shave them or something, they usually curl out a little. So I'm actually going to add that just as a little flourish. Just right there in front of the ear. I'm blending that in, okay? So we have the hairline there, and on the other side we're going to do the same thing. It doesn't take much clay when a woman has her hair pulled back because there's not much mass there. You just want to show an indicator of a hairline. Yes, too true. Women have sideburns. It is what it is. Some people shave them, and God bless them. You can do whatever you want. No judgment here. My goal is just to sculpt what I see or what I've observed, you know. Okay, so now we have all the hairline in, and I'm just going to blend the back of that back so that will all blend into the mass behind, right? So like there's everything there. And probably the hairline could inch a little bit forward on that side. So I'm just gonna add a little bit more clay here and pull that back. So now that we have that, the only thing really left to do is sort of press that down a little. And just like before, I'm just going to use the nail on my middle. I'm going to use the nail on my middle finger and just indicate just sort of like which way the hair is going by making these scratches. And I'm also going to add a hairline in the back, although you're not going to see it because this sculpture is going on a pin board. But it's good practice, so. Okay, and we do the little scratches there too. Just like that. I'm going to give her one more look. Okay, yeah, she's looking good. Now the last thing is I'm going to take a tube of clay here. I'm going to pull it off. Just going to set her down for a second. Now we have this flat bit and we have this round bit. So the round bit is where the hair is going to connect, where a hair tie would be. And this is the flat of the ponytail. So you're only going to see one side. So the one side is where I'm going to use, again, my finger here. And I'm going to indicate the different ribbons of the hair, the different forms. And then that's just going to go, you know, we'll do a high ponytail. I think the last one I did was a low ponytail. So right there, boom, high ponytail. And we have this lady. There she is. And that was the speed sculpt. I'm actually going to also take a little bit of clay here and sort of twirl it, and she'll have a baby bang. Right there. Very anime. Give her an anime-like baby bang. And that's it, man. That's the speed sculpt there. So going to slice it off, and there we go. That's another head in the books. All right, 2 done on stream. I'm going to do one more from imagination, and then I think I will start busting out reference because I'm starting to run out of ideas. Although I'm willing to take, oh, you like her hair? Cool. You like, I'm going to start doing some reference after this next one. Hey, Magda. I don't know if you go by Magdalena or Magda, but I knew people in high school, someone that had that name, so which is why I said Magda, but unless it's bad. So Looked really nice. Sorry I didn't say hi. My hands were busy. I was listening though. Haha. Tomahawk Guy looked awesome. Tomahawk Guy was a girl though. Hope Tomahawk Guy looked girlish. It's all right. We'll keep it moving. Keep it moving. We'll keep it moving. When I first met Modern Day James, when I first met Modern Day James, I was hanging out with him for a few hours at his house, and then I randomly asked him. I was like, "Hey man, does anyone call you Jim?" Because James is quite a few syllables. So I'm sorry, I tend to do that with people's names. So if Magda's not cool, please let me know. Tomahawk Guy. Magda's good, thank you. Sorry for assuming gender. You can assume. Man. All right, she could have been a little bit more feminine. I'm not gonna work on her anymore. She's done. But I probably could have made her a tad more feminine. It's all right. It's all right. We'll do it live. We'll go on next time. I appreciate the honest feedback. All right, man. Let's do this. Let's go for the next one. Sorry for assuming gender. All right. All right. Got our neck going. This time I'm not going to move as fast. I'm going to go a little slower this time. It'll be my last imagined head before I go to Med's Pinterest board for the challenge. So let's do it. Show you guys some femininity. All right. Starting off with my little jaw structure here, and I'm really going to pinch it thin. So I'm keeping the angle as thin as possible, and I'm keeping the angle of the chin thin and inside the neck. Even that's a little much, but I'm going to pull that clay in. All right. Whoop. Just kind of give it one of those. Okay, that's in, and now we can start with the skull structure. The head collection is necessarily all from realistic view, or did we have any aliens or creatures already? So here's the thing. Originally this challenge was scaring the crap out of me because I don't practice. I do all of my stuff as project-based art, just kind of. So very much the stuff that Steven preaches on his YouTube channel is stuff that he's told me since we were teenagers, and he was first showing me and teaching me how to draw. So what ended up happening was with a lot of situations, I tend to, and I'm most motivated by like, oh, I want to do a Batman, so I'll sculpt Batman. Or, oh, I love the Mandalorian, so I'll do like 12 Mandalorian sculptures, right? That's how I learn best. I'm really allergic to this kind of practice stuff. I'm really bad at it. I never went to art school. When I've taken workshops, it's all been about making the next piece and coming home from a workshop or a mentorship with like a finished sculpture I can be proud of. And I know that that's not most artists. So when I first started doing this project, to answer your question, I had seen Med in person, and I was like, you know what, man? Like, that's a really cool challenge. I love art challenges. They're really motivating for me in the summer. I like doing things like taking workshops or trying to do art challenges to like stretch my skills. So I'm going to take it on. And I told him at the time, I was like, maybe I'm going to do 45 male, 45 female, and then like 10 monsters. And he was like, yeah, whatever you want. That would be cool. And then I realized like that was a cop-out. I was doing that to try to get out of doing a full 100. And so, no, I've actually been pretty strict with myself. I've done 50 male heads already. I'm now 27 or 28 into the female heads, and like, this is me trying to get through the last of the female heads. So I may, and this was a good idea by Dolly, I think. I may at the end take all of these heads and turn it into a big head monster. Make all of the heads its legs, feet, torso, arms, and one of the heads the head of the head monster. So that might be cool. That might be really, really fun. Alright, we're already at the point where we're working the skull up to what's going to be its maximum height. Although I notice when I do this method, I tend to overshoot the maximum height and end up having to lop off some skull. That's okay. That's alright. We're approximating here. If I catch the mistake, it's good. One thing that I always noticed, even from when I started drawing back in 2012, I started really trying to learn how to draw. Actually, no, like 2010, 2011, I was trying to really learn how to draw, and then I made my first sculpture in 2012, and then it was off to the races from there. But one thing that I always noticed was if I drew a head, and by the end of it, I messed up the perspective, and it ended up looking like, I meant to draw an old man, but then it looked like a baby. The reason for that is babies have much larger skull, cranium to face ratio. Little babies have much smaller faces than an adult does. Oh, nice. Yesterday I was checking some Rodin sculptures. Oh, by the way, some people do pronounce it Rodin. Some people do pronounce it Rodin. Both are right. But some people prefer one or the other. I was first introduced to Rodin by a teacher who's calling him Rodin. So I now call him Rodin because I didn't want to feel dumb in front of that teacher who was like, yeah, I love Rodin. So, oh, nice. Yesterday I was checking some Rodin sculptures, The Gates of Hell, and this tiny head going around. Very cool concept. Big multiple head creatures looks like a good idea. Yeah, dude, I have a reference book here with The Gates of Hell and Rodin's, thinker and all of those little figures that go into it. They're not little comparatively. They're actually freaking huge. But they're little compared to the full piece. And The Gates of Hell, Rodin's just the best. The realism on being able to make it, this thing happens when people grab each other, which most sculptors can't do. I can't do it. Is that when you grab someone's hand, your finger leaves an indentation because flesh is soft. Rodin had this ability, and I've seen it in the Met in New York. Rodin had this amazing ability in marble to sculpt, when people are grabbing one another, the imprint of their fingers leaving an indentation in the skin of the other person as they hold someone. Rodin was, if you could pick two sculptors of all time, you could pick Rodin and you can pick Michelangelo, and you don't really need anything else. It's pretty awesome. So, yeah, they're great. I have a reference book of it. It's one of my favorite. My girlfriend Annie had gotten me a reference book that had all different pictures of the Gates of Hell. And it's just the best thing out there, man. Definitely really, really cool. So I've reached the maximum height here, and now what I'm going to do is, and I know that this back of the skull is going to have to be lopped off, but it's a support structure right now. So what I'm going to do next is I'm just going to start building out the frontal, this area here, which is, the back of the head, but eventually this is going to be where I want the forehead to line up. So I don't know if you guys could tell, but I'm uncomfortable with dead air. So kind of just talking nonstop. Oh man. But yeah. Rodin. Oh nice. Yesterday I was checking some Rodin sculptures against. Oh no, I already read that. You wrote that earlier. Yeah, man. Alright, so I gotta blend all this back. We're nearly there. Portraiture is such a, man, it's art within the art, right? Like, you can get so good at figures, and at some point you really do have to sit down and just really grind out the leveling up when it comes to portraits and heads. And this is not fun. I do not like to practice. I like to sculpt though, so it's good. It's just a little repetitive. That's why the reference has been good. I usually don't use reference, but it's good to use reference if you've run out of ideas. And man, I kind of have run out of ideas. Just in terms of like faces, type, all that stuff. Alright, so you can see here that I have a lot of concave area in here, and I need to start filling it up so that way this head doesn't fall apart, because if you noticed, I'm not using any armature wire at all. I've been able to boil a lot of, at this scale certainly, a lot of armature wires. You know, it's good, it gives you support, but it tends to slow you down. So if you're ever sculpting at a scale in which you think you could get away without using an armature wire, just bail on it, because the sculpture will tell you if it needs an armature wire, because it'll start to fall apart like this is. But I know that I'm filling all this negative space up with clay, so I'm just going to do that now to give myself some support, because it's not going to mess me up. I know still where where all the landmarks of the face and the head are going to line up as I'm looking at it. For sculptors, I really liked what you said. I'm going to add to the guy's Asakura Fumio. His cat sculptures are insane. I'm not familiar with him, man. He's the Rodin of Japan? Okay, this is how I know it should be pronounced Rodin, because that rhymes now. The Rodin of Japan. Like, okay. The Rodin of Japan. Okay, I gotta check him out. Asakura Fumio. I will check him out. Yeah, that's awesome, dude. If you guys are drawing, tell me what you're working on today. If you're sculpting, tell me what you're sculpting. I mostly have the internet and YouTube presence because, you know, besides Steven and Med and James, I don't really have many art friends, so it's nice to be able to like connect with people this way. Wrapping those reference sculptors. Okay, we've got the shape of the head in pretty much. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to just smooth out this forehead a little bit with my thumbs to get sort of a consistent texture, because once you have all the forms in, smoothing out the skin with as little work as I want to put into each of these heads becomes impossible. So the goal on this one, to make up for the Mohawk guy lady, is going to be to make this one as like readably female as possible. That's what we're going to do here. So, okay. I need to bring the forehead out a little bit more. A little bit more. Now, you'll you may notice that like every application of clay I use is a tube snake. There are some schools of thought that are like, do not ever use a tube snake in my studio, and I don't believe in that. I think that if you're most comfortable with tube snakes, you should use them. If you're more comfortable with little, some people, every application is a little ball of clay that they smush into place. And by the end, all of their sculptures look sort of like, what's that kind of rock? Not a igneous rock, a conglomerate rock. They all look like that. And then they'll smooth it out with tools and chemicals and things like that at the end. I don't personally work that way, but it's valid, man. Like, a lot of people that work that way with balls instead of tubes, actually, they're much better than me. So, whatever it is that'll get you there is what's best. What's best for you is what's best for you, Just adding a little bit more to the forehead, right in the middle, so I don't get a brow ridge. Yeah, me too, man. I have the Steven Discord for some art pals and then a few colleagues, but not many I can grab in an impromptu and art stuff. Yeah, I know how it feels. It's tough. Like, so for me, when I first started getting into this stuff, Steven and Med were, Med was from Ohio, but Med lived in California. Him and Steve were roommates at the time in college, and Steve lived across the country in California. And most of my other friends were either in California or away in college in other states. You would think someone living in New York is never lonely, but no, it was, I really did not have a lot of my friends and stuff living here at the time. So that was really, that was pretty crazy, which is why, initially in like 2014, I'd made an Instagram to try to connect with people, but Instagram's not, I've heard people say this and it's very true. Instagram is not a pro-social social media page. It's not like an old school message board from the early 2000s. God, I'm old. Where you can get into a whole community. Really, Proco has a good community. Steve's Discord is fantastic for that. People are really nice and helpful. But back when I was in college, it was like nothing. You'd have a better chance of going to a museum, meeting a stranger and talking art, or taking a workshop or a class or something, or waiting for your friends to come back home from college. So, it's just nice to be able to connect with people. I'm just doing a sketch, not much. That's awesome. It's good to just have something to noodle away at, Back. How long are you going to be live? I'm going to be here I'm definitely going to be here another hour. Here on the East Coast, I don't know where you're located, Dolly, but here on the East Coast, it's 10:30. I'm thinking I'll go till midnight, and then play it by ear. I'm having fun. I'm not getting tired yet. I am now just about to have my first sip of water. So there we are. But I'm good for now, man. I'm good for now. I'm gonna be live quite a while longer. I have people in here, so that gives me more energy. All right. You see, I've just carved away from the end of the occipital bun going into the back of the neck, and that's because it was just too big back there. There was too much shit going on, so I just took it away. I will take some of it back to build the neck muscles up a little bit, but the skull was getting a little balloony, a little too thick, a little too masculine, Magda. So, all right. What's also really cool for me is that a lot of the people that I talk to, or that are my friends in art, are 2D artists. So it's really cool to bring that sort of 3D perspective to things from my end. It always gives me something to add to a conversation, that's for sure. But I recently met someone that does paper sculpting, and laser cutting and cardboard sculpting and all that kind of stuff. Who does fabrications for Hollywood shows and commercials and stuff, and that is fascinating to me. It's usually so hard for me to think of mediums outside of clay or resin and model kits and things like that. So it's really cool to see somebody doing that kind of stuff in a sort of different environment. Yeah, snakes for the win, man. Snakes are the best way to sculpt for me anyway. I find that I'm able to apply clay most consistently when I use snakes and do different form shapes with the snakes. Although, and one day I'll do it, I'll stream on here and I'll use the toaster oven to heat up the Chavant and work on a large figure, and I'll work much faster. But when I'm doing that, and when you heat up Chavant, it gets about as soft as like hot butter. Like it gets really, really soft, but it's warm. Like it might, sometimes it hurts your fingers a little bit because I usually heat it up to about 150 degrees, between 150 and 190 degrees Fahrenheit. And at that point, it has no tensile strength. It's like sculpting with mud. And so I'll take a bunch of it and just sort of rub it and smear it on with my thumb. And then at that point, there's no snakes, there's no balls. It's just, you're just making men out of mud at that point. At that point, you're just making men out of mud. So, let's see. You're not going to let me pass that one, aren't you? There are masculine girls. Yes, that's true, actually. Feminine boys, very fairly undefined people. Yeah, that's very true. There's all kinds of variation, for sure. It's just, for me, I'm trying desperately to get my female face sculpts much more feminine, because for years I've gotten critiques from people on the internet, but also like family members, just people that experience my work at shows and stuff, where people are like, "Huh, that Wonder Woman, she looks like a pro wrestler." So I'm aware of the fact that like I definitely more comfortable sculpting more masculine features, wider jaws, thicker brow ridges, all that kind of stuff. So, it's very important for me to try to scale back on that stuff and work much more in that traditional aesthetic, just to be able to know that I can pull it off more easily. That's where I'm at in my learning process. I know that if I sit down and do iterations or give myself hours and hours on a head, I can nail it. But knowing that I'm doing each head for maybe 25 minutes to an hour, and it's like it's got to look right by the time I'm done, that's much more of a challenge. So this head is much more controlled, as you can see. Things are coming across much more symmetrical and just sort of controlled in the way that I want it to look. But recently, like I said, I try to take the whole summer to take a break from my usual project. So the Christmas project is done. I'm just working out the kinks on how to kickstart it appropriately, because I know I think it was you, Magda, who was asking me about the duck. So that is going to happen. Oh yes, that will happen. But I like to take the summers generally to just sort of to just workshop my skills and all that stuff. So I did Janos Garash's his Art Zone challenge. Duck, yes. I did his Art Zone challenge, and I filmed it and put it up on my YouTube. And that was really fun. I did that last month, and for me to do a whole figure in 45 minutes, that's no problem. Like, these heads, I'm doing each one in about 45 minutes. That's no problem. Usually I would do a head in 10, like with a timer. but then they're just not as refined, right? I'll go back in and I consider fine detailing and all of that stuff a second pass. But this is nice to just take some time and really build a portrait, you know. So I'm getting there. Okay. All right. Now the next issue here is that she needs to have her cheekbones need to come out a bit more, and then she needs like actual cheeks because she's all cheekbone right now. And then after we get through that, we're going to narrow that jawline down a little bit. True, I don't know anybody who knows how to draw both masculine men and feminine women. It is hard when you're used to doing the other. Yeah, and you know what I've noticed is generally I've noticed that female artists are more comfortable with female facial anatomy, and male artists tend to be more comfortable with male facial anatomy. And it provides everybody with a very unique weak spot that only gets corrected if you're going to practice. So I know it's my weak spot for sure. And it takes time. You know, you're born with the anatomy you're born with, and you're used to seeing that in the mirror. You're used to seeing that when you look in magazines and everything else, and you have to be careful that when you do the other gender, the other sex, however you want to say it, that you don't make too much. You don't make too many mistakes trying to get it right. Okay, so let's just whittle away and move that jawline up a little bit. Sweet. Okay, now we have to go in and really soften her cheeks. I'm going to use quite a bit of clay here to get that done. And one thing you may notice is that at this phase, right, I have cheekbones in, I have the beginnings of a chin, but because I have no bone for the upper lip or the mandible, it looks like a very old person, and that's because something that happens as people age is that they actually lose bone mass. This is part of the reason why people lose their teeth when they get very old. If they have bad dental hygiene or if they have bad nutrition, you'll lose your teeth as you get older because your bone mass in your jaw starts to waste away, and that's why people lose more teeth as they get older. And that's why this look is what we associate with old age in a face. So when you're looking to sculpt, and I think it's applicable to drawing as well, when you're looking to sculpt a face, if you leave out bony mass of the lower mandible or the upper lip area leading into the nose, it leaves you with a face that looks old without you having to put any wrinkles. Someone can have no wrinkles, and if they're missing all their teeth, they look old. You know, just as a type thing. So, fun fact. Fun fact Saturday. So, let's give her a little more cheek. And then once her cheeks are nice and plump, then we're going to go in and do the lips. Going to use this stylus, this rubber tipped stylus, as sort of a blending stump to just blend my forms together here. So even though the texture is not totally smooth, I'm getting the forms in the right place. And at this scale, I feel like the majority of what you need to do is cast the right shadows in the right places. Because if you illustrate the forms nearly properly, then everything else tends to be a little bit more forgivable. Just gonna sculpt away right there at that little extra bit of clay before I start working in the lips and the chin. Okay. Alright, so let's start with the upper lip. Upper lip starts right below the skin of the nose. So I'm just going to flatten it. I totally get that. I'm actually sketching a male reference because I talked with AKA Chesapeake in Steven's Discords. He was doing the females workout. I'm for the males now. I tend to do women a lot. Thank you for the mass bone lecture. I hate mass bone loss. It's a scary concept. Yeah, that's fucking crazy that happens, and it really it's like one of those reasons. Like, go to your dentist every 6 months for a cleaning, because dental hygiene is in this day and age. Dental hygiene tends to be the majority of that, because most of us have like a diet where we regularly eat, milk and cheese, and there's calcium pills nowadays and all those things. So for the most part, that's less of an issue for people, for their teeth. My understanding is that women still have to worry about osteoporosis. So of course there's that, but yeah, man, that's why teeth do what they do. That's how teeth do. She needs a little bit more upper lip, and I have no mass behind this cheekbone, so that's got to be all filled in. Still looking a little skeletal over there. Yeah, so you're working now on male head exercises, or just male characters in general. Male reference. Yeah, it's everybody's got a weak spot, and it tends to be what they're not looking at in the mirror every day. All right, adding just a little bit of extra upper lip mass. Okay, that's good. Now, you guys draw, so you know this, and this is definitely a thing that I tend to think about a lot, is the corner of your mouth should end right in line with the middle of your pupil. So because I tend to put in mouths first, I keep that in mind when I work in the pupils in later. But that's something that I think about just in terms of where my mouth should end. I'm thinking about like where's the drop dead middle of the eye socket, because that's generally where I'm going to want a pupil if I'm doing one. But on these, at this scale, like I said, I'm not working pupils in because I don't feel like you'll be able to see them, and I feel like the way that light is going to play in. I mean, look, I've been doing eyeballs one way for a lot of years, and Steve straight up told me, he was like, it's going to look better if you just stop putting those. I would make pupils by taking a pin and putting a pin in the eyeball structure to really like try to force the illusion of a pupil, and it just doesn't look as good as what I'm doing now. But I got to give him the credit. It's a really good tactic to use for sure. So I kind of rushed the bottom lip here. I put it in without the chin, but I'm going to go back later and just put in a chin after I'm done with this lip. So lip is in. Good. That's a lip. And now she needs a chin so she doesn't look chinless. How much of a chin is up to me. Pointy chin, not pointy chin, doesn't really matter. Big chin, little chin, chinny chin, chin. The one thing that I'm going to try to avoid is a very wide chin, because male skulls tend to have those wider chins, wider, boxier chins. And that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Okay, let's see. What else do I want to do here? I just want to raise her upper lip up a little bit. Okay. And just going to fill in some of the jawline behind here a little as well, behind this other cheekbone, because now this one's more three-dimensional than the other one. Okay. Let's see, the pin as pupil. Oh wait, I missed a bunch of stuff. Sorry guys. Just reviewing the male proportion. Yes, right now a sketch from original sculpture. Let's see who made this. My reference is from Toto Dust, sculptor from Thailand. Man, you're giving me a lot of great sculptors to look up. I really appreciate this. Thank you. Give me more sculptors to look up. That's awesome. Thanks, Dolly. The pin as pupil is a new idea to me. I would just use a metal needle so it works as the reflection of the eyeball. Never done it. Just imagine how it would work. Yeah, I've used it. I've literally stuck it in. Let me see if I have one I could pull off here. It won't come up. Yeah, it was fairly typical work for me to do it that way. But I don't recommend. You know why I started doing it is because I noticed that on certain sculptures in antiquity they would do it. Like I've noticed it in the Met, in the Greek and Roman sculpture wing, that head sculpts of like Alexander the Great, they would just put holes where the pupils should be to indicate pupils. And on a life-size sculpt, that's a really good illusion. At this scale, it tends to look a little cartoonish. Understandably a little cartoonish. Okay, let's pinch her. What am I gonna do? I'm gonna kind of try to simplify her nose a little bit. Right in there. All right. Sweet. Okay. All right. Now, her skull, her profile is a little bit misshapen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take from that top corner of the skull here and take it off. I'm going to slide some of this clay around to sort of, I'm not going to shorten the skull a lot. I'm just shortening it very, very little by doing this. Yeah, I need to shorten the cranium just a bit more, but I don't want to remove the forehead because then I'll get that caveman look and the whole face will end up being ruined. So now I'm pulling up some of the clay from the sides and stuff to make up what I just cut back. Yeah, I'm going to go through the chat later to look at all the sculptors you're mentioning. The Rodan of Japan. I can't wait to check this person out. Um, that's cool. I like the fact that I came on a stream, my own stream, and I have some cool stuff to look up for later. All right, so that proportion works a lot better for me. And I didn't take much off, just a little bit, there. So now I'm gonna work in the eyes, the ears, hair, and then this one's done. This one I think ended up being faster than what I thought was gonna be the speed sculpt. I think. Hmm. Okay. Eye hole 1 is in there. Eye hole 2. Are you sculpting a lot at the person in chat? I had to close out the live and join again because I couldn't see the chat, so I don't know if you said you do or not. Hi Dolly, I'm no 2D artist, but I love 3D reference. I did some sculpting exercises in the past. I was considering for the... wow, I can't read. I did some sculpting exercises in the past. I was considering for the last few months doing something 3D, not digital. Didn't learn that yet. Oh, I see. Yeah, same 3D references are really good to use. Right, I'm loving this head now. Oh, sweet, thank you. Better than real life references, actually. Yeah, it's weird. When you look at a person in real life, I find that even as a sculptor, it's very hard to zero in on what are they form shapes in front of me that I'm actually looking at. That tends to be a little confusing and mess me up as well. But I find that when you're looking at a sculpture, even a bad one, even one you don't like, even one that you've seen a million times or whatever, what ends up happening is when you're looking at a sculpture, you zero in on the forms because you're looking at it, and even if it's really great, you're seeing that it's still an object, and so you're able to see those form changes for whatever reason a lot better. So I find that sculpture tends to be really good reference, or at least easier reference to zero in rather than a live model. Although I have learned with a live model in the past, and with the right instruction and the right live model and the right studio lighting, working with a live model can change your life. Like, just in terms of raw upgrade of skill, I've had some miraculous and really positive experiences sculpting from life. I've had one experience which was not so great, but because I had a teacher that didn't do demos, I took one anatomy sculpture for it was sculpting from, what was it called? It was live sculpture, right? I had a live reference. I was sculpting the person in front of me. It was a nude dude at the National Academy of the Arts in Manhattan, and my teacher for that course didn't do any demos. He just would unlock the doors and be like, here's your sculptures, and he would chit chat with the model when the model was on breaks. The model was a really nice guy, really very helpful fella, but the problem was that because there was no demo from the teacher ever, I had a really terrible experience trying to learn there. But what was very helpful to me was I took a different class, and this other teacher and another model who was super helpful and super useful and could hold really crazy poses and stuff. But the teacher did demos of everything and corrected your work. He'd walk around and be like, hey, you have some problems here. Do you mind if I just give you some markups? And I'd be like, yeah, dude, that's what it's all about. So he would do that, and he was just fantastic. And if you want if you live on the East Coast of the United States and you're looking for a sculpture workshop, this was he's pretty famous on Instagram. His name is Brian Booth Craig, and just fantastic. Really great to do a sculpture workshop with Brian out in Pennsylvania. So it was a drive for me, but it was such a great. It was a 40-hour work week. He teaches a great workshop for that. If you're interested in learning live sculpting, So she's coming together. She's good. One lip is a little bit bigger than the other, but I can fix that with just like the tiniest application of clay. I just got to control it. I mean, sculpture's already kind of digested with a few aesthetically appealing choices that we totally kind of appreciate. Doing art from life reference requires a lot of choices to make. Yeah, that's true. There's choices to make there. But even if you weren't going to make any artistic decisions working from life, for some reason, when you're looking at a person in their skin, it can be hard to be like, where do these forms end? Like, I mean, or maybe that was a problem for me, and that's not common with a lot of people. I've found that photo reference is a lot easier to digest of a live model, probably because it flattens everything out. The only problem with that is if you're trying to do something where you really want to express form, and then you're in a new pickle, Then you've got a brand new problem. The lip on the other side is a little flat, so I have to add a little bit more there too. I don't think I'm going to go wrong by making the lips on a female character bigger. I don't think it's going to take away from it, really. I mean, I don't want her to look cartoonish or whatever. But I think that's still within... That's definitely within the range of actual humans, for sure. So that's good. I just want it to be equal. I want there to be symmetry on both sides of the upper and lower lip. So there you go. That's good. Okay, let's work some ears on her and then give her a hairstyle. I'm willing to take hairstyle suggestions. Let's do ear 1. Let's do ear 2. Okay. You know what? And this is a problem when you sculpt. You have to always make sure that you put both ears the same depth away from the face. And if your ears are too close to the face and not far back enough on the head, they should be about halfway between the end of the skull and the face, the point of the face. If they're not back far enough, it can make all the features on the face look really flat. So that's always something on my checklist to make sure that I don't accidentally really mess up. Yeah, she's definitely looking, she's starting to look right. Okay. All right, let's get some hair on her. Cone head like the movie goes into creatures, I guess. Female. Pixie haircut, cornrows. Okay, let's do pixie, because I haven't done pixies yet. And then next one will be cornrows. Pixie's fun. All right, let's do pixie. Allow me to keep the ears in here too. Okay, so with pixie cut, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting in just little bangs and stuff, and I'm going to want to preserve forehead, but I'm also going to want to make sure that even though I'm preserving forehead, that I give a nice amount of texture, you know. Okay, all right, cool. Pixie cut first, cornrows next. All right. We're going to do some curly girl sideburns here. Just going to keep them simple. And now that we have that one side marked in, I'm going to do the next side. All right, that gives you, so here's the funny thing, right? There's not a lot of mass that hair adds to the head, especially when it's a short hairstyle or when hair is pulled back tight, obviously. You end up getting the silhouette of the skull for the most part. So there's not much for me to do left, although what I'm going to do, just to kind of make this a little fun, I'm still going to texture it out a little bit. Just a little bit. Give her some bangs that come down just a little. And on the other side, I'll give her a little bit of mass. Just right there. And then, so I'm getting a crack here in the neck, and a way to repair that. This is an old trick that I learned in a workshop with the sculptor Simon Lee, who's Simon Lee's on Instagram, and he did the monsters for the movie Pacific Rim, and I've taken a bunch of his classes. Simon's fantastic. Is you press in where you have a crack and it fills a negative space that you can't see, and then you just fill it in with a new snake of clay. When you cornrows, do the side ones, if you know what I'm talking about. The side ones, like they'll be going to the side of the head, and then they'll kind of drape down like they'll be longer here, but they'll be braided to the side. Let me know if that's what you mean. Yeah, man, a little extra hair texture never hurt anybody. I just had to modify her jawline just slightly because I didn't like the angle that I took. It was too rounded, and I wanted her jawline just a little bit more square. She needs a little more hair on this side too. Just a little. All right. Yeah. Yeah, I need to make a decision here with this jawline a little bit more. See, I second guessed myself, and I just should have stuck with what I did originally. All right. Now, just gonna blend the hair, and she's done. If you need a reference, look up lemonade braids, okay? I'm sure I've seen them before. Okay. All right, what do we think of the pixie cut? Well, that was some new information for me. Thanks, Dolly. It's looking good. All right, sweet. All right, I'm gonna move on. So far tonight, we have, just to review, this is what we've got so far. We've got her, ponytail lady, punk rocker, and before I came on stream I did one more, but this is so far what we got on stream. So not bad. So let's keep going. It's 11:12. Let's see if I get two more done before midnight. Then we'll see where we're at. I'm just going to thin her neck out a little bit. Okay. Okay. Pixie style, really cool. Thank you. Okay. All right. Okay. There's our neck. So what are we up to now? I think I might be on, what did I say in the description? What was I on? 74? When I started, I was on 74. We've done 3, so now we're on 78, right? 78. I'm on vacation this week for my day job, so I'm planning to get a lot of art done. I'm hoping to finish these damn 100 heads. And so that's cool, man. Yeah, 74. When did you start this? I started this. When was Ahmed in town? I started this, I think, 2 weeks ago. I want to say 2 weeks ago. And the thing is, like, you know, because I have a 9 to 5 job, I have to sculpt on my off time and stuff. So, you know, I try to get in like 20 or 30 hours of sculpting a week. And I've been doing a head usually within 45 minutes to half an hour, because I want to try to make them as realistic as I can, you know. So we're going to keep going, keep moving. We're going to keep it moving. Keep it moving. Oh, lemonade braids, right? Lemonade braids. Lemonade braids. Okay, I can do this. I can do this. Hell yeah. Definitely. Alright, sweet. I would have been on month 2. Yeah. It's I feel that if you just make the time and you keep moving. A timer's good if you really lose track of time. You could do this. I could do it. What's how's the video looking to you guys? Is it somewhat crisp, or is it blurry? Just because I'm getting warnings from YouTube, but I'm not sure whether or not I should heed their warnings. Please check the video resolution. The current resolution is 1024 by 576, which is not optimal. Let me know if it's blurry or weird, or if I sound weird, guys. Crisp. Sweet. Cool. What does YouTube know anyway? All right. Building up that silhouette. Go to the wheel, advanced options for resolution. Go to the wheel. Stream settings. Stream health. I don't see a wheel. That's all right. Not you. You find this for Dolly. Sorry, Joe. Oh, sorry. My bad. Oh, for Dolly. Sorry, Dolly. Sorry, Magda. I can see you at 480p using my phone. All right. I'm ignoring now. Sorry, guys. Stream. Okay. Continuing with my silhouette. Alright, I have the head width here, I have the width, I have the bottom, I have the top. Now everything that goes in here is all going to be face. So first things first, I want to bulk out the what's going to be the depth of the forehead. Alright, sweet. Joe will stay tiny, that's okay, we're here for the art. Yeah, man, I feel like that's a very common decision for art YouTubers. The good ones anyway. Just keep your face tiny or no face at all. Maybe a face. Maybe put your face in there so people know who they're talking to, but yeah, man. Face tiny, art big. I started getting a lot of recommendations for videos for I'm not gonna name names or whatever, but a certain art YouTuber who like has a lot of videos on like making art, sharing your art, and all that kind of stuff. And I realized after I watched about 12 of this person's videos, I was like, they never do art on this channel. They just talk about it. And then I realized that that's actually far more common than I realized. Just how many art YouTubers don't make art? Oh man, crazy. The things that I wouldn't think of that are true. Bulking in that occipital bun. So I was asking, I had asked somebody recently what I had to do, because a weakness of mine in portraiture is racial type, just differentiating. And I was like, oh, I have trouble, if I sit down and I'm aiming for a particular type, racially speaking, it's difficult for me to make those differentiations within my work consciously. Sometimes things will come out looking one way or another way, and that's fine. But sometimes, like for instance, for this head, we're going to do lemonade braids rather. So I'm actually going to aim for a particular type on this skull, on this head. So in order to do that, the way to do that is to start at the skull level. And if you can do that properly from an anatomical artist perspective, then you can do that without, you could do that while being accurate, being correct in the art, being respectful of the different types of people that you're attempting to portray in your art. And that's big for me. You want to be able to give equal representation and things like that, and do different types, I hate same face with artists. God bless Norman Rockwell, but man, the guy liked painting one type of people. Uh, you know, one of the greatest painters of all time, but still in all, there's a lack there. So, anyway, I'm going to try to get this done. And so it starts at the silhouette, just like anything else in it, and it ends up from there. I had this problem once when I was taking a class, and man, a short homework for the class or the workshop, whatever you want to call it, was to take reference of a skull and to sculpt the skull. And I did, and then the oh yeah, very true about Rockwell, yeah. And then the thing was that sculpt this skull, and then once you feel like you've sculpted the skull, add flesh to it. Add muscles and features and turn it into a person. And I did it, and I noticed that I had no control. I got it very accurate with this reference. I put 5 hours into the skull, and I ended up repeating the homework because I realized that the skull, when I added flesh, had a particular type to it, and it freaked me out. I was like, I didn't aim for that, so I was like, that's weird. I don't seem to have control there. So I did the skull again. I made sure it was more accurate. I added flesh, and it came out the same type. And I was like, that's weird. And I remember I asked the teacher, and the teacher was like, can I see your skull reference? And I was like, yeah. And I showed it to them, and the teacher was like, the reason why it looks to be this gender and this type is because that is the gender and type of the skull. He was like, you did a good job. Like, if you did a bad job, it would have been able to come out differently. But because you followed the skull so faithfully, it ended up looking correct. So I was like, oh man, that's awesome. I'm glad that I didn't accidentally mess up by trying to force variation on skull reference where that variation shouldn't have been. So that's a hard thing to control, especially when you're constructing in clay. Yeah, same. I consciously do it. Yeah, man, it's a crazy. It's one of those things. So, yeah, that particular exercise, the skull was female, and the skull was the skull reference was Asian type, and I was like, I remember being like, I'm not consciously meaning to do this. Is this subconscious? Like, have I been hypnotized? And I remember my teacher just being like, no, dude, you did a good job. Like, it's, you have to put in more work now to be able to differentiate those different skull types in terms of type and sex, but, you're on the path. And obviously I wouldn't be doing this 100 heads exercise if I was 100% there. I'm still learning, Stephen got a kick out of that when he heard about it. That was very it's very funny for him. All right. let's I have the silhouette basically in, so now I'm going to start working in the ocular cavity. Okay, good, good, good. I never thought about how it's the skull. Yeah, man. It all comes from the skull. You know, we tend to, when it comes to type, we tend to think of, I mean, because you're seeing it every day in front of you, you know, the people that you go to school with or that you talk to, or your friends or your coworkers, your colleagues or whatever. We notice our differences at the skin level and then maybe at the muscle level. You know, we notice our differences between our chins, jaws, noses, brows, things like that, foreheads. But what we don't realize is that, you know, let's say the nose, variations in the nose, like that's because of variations in the size of your nasal cavity, depth and height of your nasal cavity. Like that's all that is. Everything else is just cartilage on top of it. But like that shit is all dictated on that. All right. All right, let's get some cheekbones going. I don't know if you guys were in here when I covered this, but for this exercise, I'm limiting my amount of tools. So I'm using my fingers and my thumbs, obviously, but all that I'm using, and I'm not using this knife and ruler. The knife and ruler are just to keep me on track in terms of staying within where the camera is, but I'm using a ballpoint stylus that has a rubber nib on the back of it, which I'm using to smooth. I'm using this as a blending stump and this to push clay around. I have this thin clay spatula and one loop tool. That's it. 3 tools. That's all I'm using. Nothing else. Nothing fancy. Nothing crazy. 3 little tools for anyone that's getting into sculpting or becoming a sculptor or whatever. Like, really, you know, if you're using more than 3 tools on any sculpture, you should either be working at a very large format, like life size or bigger, or you're just, and I've been there too. I have way more tools than I'll ever use, which is good, just because when they break, I have more tools, and they do break from time to time. But you don't need that many tools. You really don't need that many tools. Talking about day jobs and working at home, I saw this Proco video at Comic-Con, how pros do, etc., and I'm fascinated not by the amount of hours they draw, but when do they even eat? When do you eat? I feel as though when I'm working on art, I've been here for how long has it been? 3 hours? 2.5 hours. This is my second sip of water. I think it's very easy to get carried away and like not take bathroom breaks. I mean, you guys see, if you're ever in Steven's streams, like, what does he take in a 4-hour stream? 2 bathroom breaks, and I never see him drink water. He probably does, but I don't notice it. So I think it's really easy when you're in the zone to not take a break. I mean, I'm not in the zone right now. I'm talking to you guys. I'm not listening to music and just zoned out. I'm essentially having an art hangout with 3 people. But it's weird, man. Like when you're really focused on this stuff, how often do you guys eat? I mean, I just don't eat when I'm sculpting. I don't know. It's super weird, but I don't do it. All right. So for type, let me just do this, right? Lesson wise, obviously, because I'm gonna do lemonade braids, I'm going for more of an African type skull and face. So what I did was I increased the size of the occipital bun, and I increased the size of the amount that the forehead protrudes, which is typical of that type. I'm also going to have the nasal cavity higher up on the face, and I'm setting the eyes a little wider, so that way the nasal cavity can sit a little wider as well, which is typical of both African types and also of Mediterranean types like me. So that's what I'm doing with this. So I'm going to keep this slightly higher up. And what I'll do is I'll actually build the whole skull this time, because I love skull construction. So right here with what I've done, and you can see it here, is the bridge of the nose is bone. When someone breaks their nose, there is bone there to be broken. So what's going to happen is the majority of the way that your nose protrudes is based mostly from how much your bone protrudes, and then everything after that tends to be your cartilage, which sits on top of it and then curls under. That's the cartilage part. That's a part that you can move. So on European type noses, the bone comes down lower and points out more. On the African type, it will go down a shorter amount and won't stick out quite as far, but it still sticks out more than you'd think. And most art students, myself included, tend to think that the features of the skull, no matter the type or the gender, tend to be flatter than they really are, and they're actually not flat. They're actually, like, I'm trying my best to stay within as much realism as possible, and essentially the skull that would still, like, right in here would be that, right in here would, I don't know how you're seeing this, yeah. So right in here, that's where the nasal cavity really would sit. Which I think is really cool. And then your cartilage is under there. So like as I'm building this nose, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put cartilage. This next application is the cartilage. Precisely do it by clock, because then I forget, and when I stand up I'm dizzy and no energy and force the brakes. Yeah, that's happened to me before. That sucks. That nobody likes that. Nobody wants that. You get up and you're like, oh man, I didn't eat breakfast. It's 3 p.m. Yeah, man. Not fun. Not cool. Not fun, not cool. let's see. Need a little bit more clay on this side of the nose. Yeah, once you get to a certain point where you're shaving off or adding fractions of millimeters, it's like, that's when you know you're really getting there. Okay. All right, very good. Now we need the upper lip. I'm probably going to take a second pass to build the upper lip up even more because I really had a lot of negative space there. Yeah, man. All right, sweet. We're getting there. Now I'm curling the lip up. Upper lip, I'm curling it up. Okay. Now what I need next is, I want this nose to point just a little more. Okay. Then I just got to blend it in. All right. Now we need that lower lip and we need a chin. Everybody needs a chin. Chin go in. Okay. All right. She needs actual cheeks. Actual cheeks. I may have to go even higher in the cheekbones too. I think they're a little flat. All right, let's blend these in. I just want to revisit that lower lip. Getting there. getting there. She needs higher cheekbones though. Cheekbones are a little flat. Nice nose. Thank you. Everybody needs a chin. That's like the best aesthetic surgery advertisement. Like those weird Da Vinci face studies. Yeah, all these weird chins and noses. Fascinating. Yeah, man. Not only does everybody need a chin, but without one, I mean, if you didn't have a chin, where would your face end? Yeah, her face is starting to look nice and soft in the best ways possible. I do need to go a little higher on those cheekbones. Not by too much, but see, I in this sense there was no snakes. I did do I made equal circular balls and flatten them and put them in place, and now I'm just going to blend them so that way the middle of where I'm blending from forms a point, and that gives me the high point of the cheekbones because the original bits that I put weren't big enough. So I'm just going to blend them by hand. Women tend to have cheekbones that are higher, not always sharper, but generally they stand out more because they tend to be a little higher. But also then women's cheeks are rounder as well. So it's an interesting sort of, for a guy, it's an interesting sort of thing to learn how to illustrate sculpturally or otherwise, you know. Yeah, I want to come back and give her, just want to readdress that bottom lip. She's looking good. Yeah. Not much because we already have a lip in place. This is just going to be just supplemental. And that little bit of jaw there needs to come down just a little bit. Okay. Lower lip, then eyeballs, ears and hair. That's too much. That's too much. I'm going to use my spatula to cut off a little piece of clay. I mean, at this point, and at this scale, you know, little tiny bits mean a world of difference, you know. Yeah, like even that, that might work. That's, I think that's perfect. I just have to blend it in. You know, especially if I could get a lip that gives a little bit of an emotion. It's a little smile or something, you know? Okay. All right, good. Position her head so she's looking up slightly. All right, now let's just do her. Just want to blend that under her chin. She looking cute. I'm trying, man. I am trying. Okay. If I can, I just want to raise that upper lip just a little. Damn. Shoot. I'm gonna have to redo the upper lip. It's all right. It's all right. It'll come back better. All right, now let's get that lip in. That is one thing as a sculptor, man. You got to make sure you don't crane your neck. Now that happened, what about no monsters, but people with scars or overdone surgery or big massive lips gone wrong? Well, a lot of times when I mess up, that happens. But I did do one male figure that I gave like a big crazy like Yamcha from DBZ scar. But I'm not opposed to doing a lady with an eye patch. I will go full Kill Bill. All right. Now that happened, that's funny. Look, man, these things happen. It's art. Sometimes you fuck up and have to make an erasure. That was the first time you guys had to see me really fix something after getting really that far towards the end. But, her upper lip wasn't three-dimensional enough. I mean, I'm sure on stream it probably looked fine, but I could see that it wasn't equal. Now that's a lot better. That upper lip is the same on the left and the right side. Now that happened. But I'm actually going to make her ocular cavities a little bit bigger, because if anime has taught us nothing, it will trick us into thinking she's prettier than she is. And I bet you couldn't even notice that difference, but I notice it. Good, thanks. I'm glad she's coming along. Get this clay in there. And we'll start making these eyeballs real. All right. It's one. And that's two. All right, sweet. Sweet, sweet. The eye patch comment cracked me up because I think that's 101 2D artists learning symmetry gone wrong. Eye patch. Yeah, that's true, man. Yeah, I can't see all the details good, but from what I can see, it is cool. Good. All right, now for the fun part. We get to do those lemonade braids, which is what started me on her to begin with. But she needs ears. Ear one, ear two. And once I connect them, I know that at first, putting them on, they stick out a little bit, but that's on purpose. So once I merge the clay, so that way there's not like a line here. Once I blend that clay, and you get the sort of ear indentation that implies that it's, you know, your ears go into your head, that they're a hole. Then I'll pull the ears back a little bit, and then it gives you that correct angle right there. So there we go. Okay, now lemonade braid time. So let me look back at my reference for a second. I'm going to do like to the side. Like the 20th picture is a picture of Beyonce, and they're like side swept. So that's kind of how I'm going to do it. All right, cool. I can pull this off. All right, so what I'm going to need is, I'm going to have to go back to my old friend, clay snakes. And I'm going to show you guys a cool sculptor trick, which saves time. So, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take, this piece of clay is as big as her head. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start working it in my hands to thin it out and roll it. because I'm going to want this piece of clay really, really thin. What I'm going to do is I'm going to work each braid onto the hair and blend it into the head, leading to where the full mass of all the braids meet, and then they're going to meet in one form. So there's a lot of ways this can go wrong, but there's a lot of ways this can go right. This is even still way too huge. I'm gonna break it off here. And you know what? I've been doing all this with 3 tools, but I may break out another tool just so that way you guys don't have to see me rolling clay in my hands for so long. So, rolling pins. This is a broken drumstick. Very, very, very important for a sculptor, because otherwise you can really wreck your hands working with clay that's too hard or too cold or whatever. So right there, you see how this already rolled out? So I lied, 4 tools. 4 tools, the 4th one being the rolling pin. So, all right, let's see. Okay. All right. So now that I have that, I'm going to go here and just slice this off. And now I'm going to slice some long tubes here, nice and thin. And I'm going to roll this because I need it to be the right shape, which is going to be actually tube-ish, right? But I want that texture still in there, so I'm not going to roll out the texture. So I don't want this totally smooth. I want this to be texture of hair. And I may even go back in and give it some texture. They see me rolling, they heating, all those snakes even rolling dirty. That's funny. That is very funny. All right. So it's funny. This process is funny. I'll tell you why this process is funny. This process is funny is because everything you guys have seen me do tonight, I've not been sweating. But I've never done this hairstyle before. I want to get it right. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go for the first one here. I'm going to start where the hairline should. I'm going to sweep away around the head towards where the mass is going to meet up. And I'm going to do this again with the next braid. I'm going to try not to leave too much space between the braids. Then again, I'm going to roll this out. Yeah, see, it's already starting to come together. And you'll see how I'm going to blend them into the head. So it doesn't look like snakes on a head. It'll look like hair that grows out of the head. And that's a similar technique to the way that sculptors will sculpt veins in skin, which is, I'll show you on one of them right now, which is, I'll show you on this bottom one here. So you have it here, and you want it to look like it grows out of the head. So what you do is you blend the clay in with the ballpoint, right? And I want it to show all the way around back of the head there. And then what you do is you come back in with your tool and you just smooth that out. And it gives you the illusion of one form. And then if you want to have the texture of braids, you come back on the top and just sort of texture it a little bit up top. And that should give you the right texture there. Now, I would say that I probably left too much space between those two braids. So I'll go in and I'll add another one, but I'm going to blend them all in first, and then I'll add some more. I should have, when I put the first one in, I should have started blending then. But now that I pretty much have the reference locked in, I'm not going to do a more intricate design than just sort of side swept, but that's sort of what I'm thinking. On 4 braids on her, and it's already cute. Good. Okay, good. That's good to hear. Trying to make this look good. Yeah, and you see, once you have them all blended and the texture is basically right, you end up getting, they'll, I hate to use the word blend again in a sentence, but they all begin to blend together in such a way that it looks correct. It looks like hair texture. That's why, man, I pray at the temple of tube clay snakes. I think that I really do think it's the best way to go. I think that you get the best results that way. Because you can squish them in, you can texture them, you can blend a clay tube snake. Okay, cool. More braids coming. Did you get burnout in between the time you started the heads yet? Yeah, man. I really, and I've texted Med about this, but you know, I don't like homework. I don't like, sculpting is my fun hobby. It's my passion, so I like to turn around and be like, yeah, I love Darth Vader. I want to sculpt Darth Vader or whatever, and then I'll turn around and I'll sculpt Darth Vader. I do not like being in a position where I feel like I have all homework hanging over me and stuff. So I'll tell you where I really had some problems with this was I was struggling with some burnout around head 25 to 30. I was like, wow, I've done so many more than I would ever sit down to do. Holy crap. I'm only 30 heads in. I still have 70 more to go. I haven't even gotten to the female heads yet, and I don't want to do this anymore. So yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's definitely made. I mean, this is one of the best female heads I've ever made. Some of these in this project have been definitely the best portraits I've ever done. So I'm seeing the benefits of it, and my techniques for portraiture are getting much more efficient. I'm learning things and keeping them inside me that are anatomy tips and tricks or whatever that I've never done before. And never been able to pull off without reference. So there's definitely a lot here that's really, really cool, really worth it, Shit, why didn't I ever think to do braids before? This is so fucking fun. Praise the Two Snakes Temple. Thanks, Dolly. Let me look back at the reference real quick. Oh, sweet. Okay, then on this side they'll come from a different direction. That is so fucking cool. All right, sweet. Let's do that. Now we get to go side swept. I'm going to start with the one in the front first. I'm going to cover one of my beautiful ears, but it's okay. That thing finally happened. I don't know if you guys just caught it, but I went to go look for a tool that I put down right in front of me and forgot where I put it down. Which is, for me, that's how I know I'm in the zone. When I'm looking for things that I literally put down while I've been zoned out. So that's good. I'm having a good time. This was cool because in a stream this long, I hadn't really done anything where I was really rendering. And like I'm really rendering some textures here, so you know. Blend this in a little bit better. Yeah, the snakes got me in the zone. It's true. I will always appreciate how you guys were laughing that I was struggling to get like all of this non-heated clay to this, to this, to these quickly, and I'm like, shit, I'm on stream. They're gonna watch me needing to pull out the drumstick pin roller. So what I'm doing with this is I'm not really affecting the form of each braid. What I'm doing, like we talk about texturing a lot in art, and I think people get a little bit jammed up about what texture really is. Texture is putting surface noise, essentially. At the end of the day, it's putting surface noise onto a form without significantly altering the form. Like this this tube snake, which became this braid, is the exact amount of clay it was made up of when I first put it in. But all I did was add surface noise to give it the illusion of the sort of texture that braided hair sometimes has. So I haven't altered the form. The form is the same. I just put so many marks in it that it creates the illusion of what we like to refer to as texture. But I mean, you get so many people that like get so, digital sculptors mostly. Digital sculptors tend to do this thing where they like, for them, texture is like alpha patterns that they download, which I download too, and then they put it in a form, and then it like totally bastardizes the whole form. It breaks it down and it warps it, and then they're like, oh, I don't get it. I just did texturing work, and it's like, no, you changed the form significantly, and now your work doesn't look as good. But you could use a brush tool with a negative brush tool to do the exact same thing, and you can get an effect where you take this, and by marking the surface but keeping the same amount of mass in the form, you get what you're looking for. And I think that's really the way to go about it. This is the best female head I've done by far. Like this looks like a real human being. That's amazing. I don't mean to pat myself on the back. I'm just seeing my growth here. Sorry, guys. This is great. I'm so happy with myself. You sure you forgot, or did it go through a portal? Surface noise looks pretty nice. Thanks, Magda. Pat. Forget to show it to the cam. Yeah, man. Oh, sorry. Sorry about that, guys. I got really close. Yeah, it's one day. It's definitely something, a goal of mine, to get to a point where I get a little bit better of a setup, so that way it would be nice to have a camera actually over my shoulder. This webcam is actually in front of me, and I have it pointing down at an angle where it looks like it's over my shoulder, but it's not. So when I'm actually looking at, I'm not quite sure exactly what you guys are seeing. So that's why I'm looking up to check chat, but I'm also looking up to make sure that I'm still in cam and stuff. So it's actually not bad. All right, sweet. I think maybe 2 more braids, right? Yeah. Okay, let me set her down for a second. Who's cooking in the back? Can you hear cooking or like something? Who's cooking in the back? Can you hear noises? I've got my fan on. All right, last two in, texturing them, and then I think we're done. I don't know. I hear utensils hitting each other. Maybe they're washing dishes. Oh yes, I think somebody. I think my girlfriend is in the kitchen. Surprising you can hear that. I'm all the way upstairs. All right, guys. I'm pretty happy with this. I gotta say, pretty happy with this. All right. Hair came out really nice. I could add another braid in there. That's a little sparse. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, I'm gonna put one. Trying to hide one right in there. But that doesn't look right. If there's space, right? Okay, there we go. My roommate is using the microwave. It's and it's nuclear powered. Sometimes I lose Wi-Fi because of it, just in case I vanish. Yeah, no worries. I think I'm probably gonna wrap up in the next couple of minutes anyway. So we got pretty far. We got pretty far tonight. All right, so let's see. We have her. We have lemonade braids. We have pixie cut. High ponytail. And mohawk. So we got 4% of the way through the total project, but I think I think this means we broke into the 80s, right? Nope, we're at 78. Shit. Okay, the next one will be 79, but I have the week off, so let's do this again, guys. Magda, thanks for being here. Dolly, thanks for being here. There were some other folks in here, but they were silent lurkers, so thanks for them too for coming by. I hope you guys have a good Saturday night, and maybe again tomorrow. Thanks, Dolly. All right, guys. Well, let's do this again soon. And what do I have? Another 22 heads. So let's do it. Let's get through the last 22. Good night, everybody. Be well. Take care.